Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girdharidhari Yashodanandana Prajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai कलिपान हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय श्रीमद् परमहंस प्रभुजीकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत कृष्ण कृपा मूर्ति अभय चरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत संस्कृतपाठ की जय श्रीमद् परमहंस प्रभुजीकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत कृष्ण कृपा मूर्ति भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी ठाकुर गुरुपाद की नामाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण को गोपीनाशान कुंड राधा कुंडगिरी गोवर्धन की मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की मायापुर धाम की पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथ धाम की द्वारकापुरी धाम की गंगामयी मनमाई की भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की कलुपान हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय निथाय गौर प्रेमानंदी सामूहिक भक्तवृंद की सामूहिक भक्तवृंद की सामूहिक भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री गुरु और गौरांग की। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। आज ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंद गोप कुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। So Hare Krishna, this evening we are reading from Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter, Dhyan Yoga. So the verse we are taking is verse number 26. Yato yato niścalati manaś cañcalam asthiram tatas tato niyamyaitad ātmanyaiva vaśaṁ nayet. Yato yato niścalati manaś cañcalam asthiram tatas tato niyamyaitad ātmanyaiva vaśaṁ nayet. Yato yato niścalati manaś cañcalam asthiram tatas tato niyamyaitad ātmanyaiva vaśaṁ nayet. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. From wherever the mind one must okay. अभी अभी क्या है कि क्लास चालू हो गया है. हाँ. So sorry, it was partially disconnected. I'll continue again. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness in transcendental sense happiness. The senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesha or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. So, Hare Krishna. So, in today's verse, what we see, so Krishna is telling Arjuna about the nature of our mind, and what Prabhupada explains here, that the nature of the mind, that we should not be controlled the mind. In fact, we are supposed to control the mind. That's what Prabhupada writes. So basically, now and tomorrow, and from verse 7 to 27, so the process of yoga and mind control is explained. So in this verse, Krishna uses three adjectives to describe the nature of our mind. First, he explains as niścalati, that means wandering. Then cañcalam, cañcalam means flickering, and asthiram means unsteady. By steady intelligence, the yogi must overcome all those mental tendencies. The yogi cannot indulge his mind in gratifying his senses. He must know for certain that yielding to the mind will destroy his tranquility. So now one of our acharyas, what he questions is that a question may be raised that if the controlled mind becomes suddenly tempestuous and restless, what should be done? Lord Krishna answers this question here. The mind must be immediately rescued back from whatever sense object that caused the mind to deviate, and this should be done again and again until the mind becomes fixed in the ātmā or the soul. So what we understand here is very much what Krishna wants to tell Arjuna. How come if the mind suddenly pulls back? Like we can give the example. So if we get electronic or electrical appliance, for example, if you have a mobile, so if it's not working, then the company manual, what it explains, there is a reset. So another example, like they are sold to a new owner. Sometimes these animals, they come back to their home. We have an example in the Bhagavatam, King Nriga. Actually, King Nriga every day used to give so many cows but one day one cow wandered back, came back to his palace, means where the Goshala was there, and that same cow was given in charity to another Brahmana next day, and there was a big fighting between these two Brahmanas. So this way, what we can understand here, what Krishna is telling Arjuna, that yes, if the mind retrieves back again and again, but we have to put him again right on the track. So now, regarding the mind, there are so many even materialistic people. Oftentimes they are confused about the mind. So it was in 1970s, when the US lost to Vietnam. There was a war between US and Vietnam, and about 50,000 US soldiers were killed. And it was a big defeat for the Americans. And when the American soldiers, when they came back to the States, so one of the GI was asked, GI means gunnery instructor. He was asked, how come despite having all the modern warfare equipments, everything, how come you lost to these tiny Vietnamese soldiers? So the reply was, he said, we didn't know who our enemy was. So he gave the right answer. So further he elaborated that sometimes that the farmer, he used to come with a tractor, but in the tractor there used to be a bomb. Oftentimes some ladies, they used to get some ice cream, but in that ice cream vending machine there used to be a bomb. So like that, they were killed in a very subtle manner. They couldn't understand who their enemy was. And what we see for our this, we are in the 21st century, and we are at the peak of our modern civilization, advancement, whatever it is. And it is mentioned that the biggest disease of the 21st century is mental disease. And today's scientists, what they explain, that every day our mind generates between 10,000 to 50,000 thoughts, especially those who are living in the city. Now we can imagine, although it is mentioned that 99% of the people all over the world, they use hardly 1% of the mind. And by using just 1% of mind, this is what is a big thing happening. So we can imagine if we use 5%, 10%, forget about 100%. So in this verse, what Krishna has elaborated three things about the mind. So flickering and unsteady. Now, so many examples are given by our acharyas. Also in the materialistic people, also they give some examples of mind. So most of the prominent examples are given, that of a child, a monkey, a horse, a dog, wind, ocean. So these are the common examples given. So all of us know about the children. Monkeys, they are always unsteady, restless, flickering. And horse, oftentimes it is mentioned that the horse rider, if he leaves the horse loose, he will put you down. If you hold back the horse, he will not go ahead. So similarly, sometimes we see some people, they have their dog and they are walking with the dog, but the dog is pulling his own way and the master is trying to retrieve him, put him on the track. So ocean, what we see, ocean, there are so many waves are coming. It is always unsteady. Similarly, wind, the wind example is given in Bhagavad Gita also. So we should understand that our mind is a big storehouse of good and bad thoughts. So on an average, our acharyas, what they explain, that our thoughts, they are generated in three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And if we act on those thoughts, basically in the second chapter, Krishna explains, dhyato vishyan pumsa sangaste shubhajayate. So while contemplating on sense objects, that's what Krishna explains. So one devotee, he was giving one good example. Now, although there are so many countries, they are called so-called advanced countries, but still there are the dacoits and burglars, they are very much prominent in stealing. Actually, there is one real life story in UK. One real thing happened. So one big bank was looted in the middle of the city, but in one different sense. So the thieves, they made a big plan, and what they did, near to the bank on the road, there is a local railway. There is a underground railway. So there, what they did, they started digging near the telephone cable, and what people thought, this telephone people, they are working. So it took them about 1 week time to make a tunnel to enter the bank locker underground, and they completely emptied the bank on Sunday morning, because usually the Sunday bank is closed. So now we can imagine in this, because they made a plan, they contemplated on that, and they acted on that. So basically, what happens in our day-to-day life, because whatever the thoughts they come in our mind, if we act on that, then we'll be in a very much bad situation of life. So the analogy of what Prabhupada gives in Bhagavad Gita is that of a chariot of body. So the five senses, they are compared to five wild horses: the eyes, ears, tongue, nose, and sense of touch. So the mind is like the loose ropes which is holding the horses, because our senses, they are controlled by the mind. Mind is called the sixth sense. So in that sense, mind is controlling the horses, and intelligence is higher than the mind, and intelligence is supposed to control the mind. But what is happening? The mind has overtaken the intelligence, and the soul is the passenger in this chariot of the body. So in one sense, what we see, because the intelligence is being subdued by the mind, so it is very difficult to subdue the mind. In material way, what we see, there are some examples like we can quote, like how to bring the mind back to its normal course of any life. Like when we drive a vehicle, usually the driver is holding the steering, and the steering, he's always cautious that the steering doesn't go this way, that way. He's trying to hold the steering. Similarly, ships or aircraft, they have also steering, because the ship or the aircraft has to go in one particular direction. A ship, even if it deviates one degree, it will land somewhere in different place, about 60 miles in a different direction. So the mind is also controlling the ship, and the steering is also controlling the ship. So the mind, it will try to deviate us. So our acharyas, what they explain, don't act on the demands of the mind. Because why the mind is deviating? Because the mind has no proper training. So again, one good example, that especially in defense, in US Marines, when the Marines, they are given a training with the guns. So they are trained that the gun is a loaded gun. That is what is put in their mind all the while, that what gun they are carrying, although there is no bullets. So, but they are being told this is a loaded gun, and you should not point it at others. And doing that way is considered as a offense. And also in today's materialistic way of life, no value education is given to the children. What we see today, children, they don't have any value education or moral education. They don't know about Rama and Mahabharata. So one time what happened, there was one inspector visiting a school. He was an educational inspector and he was visiting one school, and he thought of just checking the children's IQ, how much they know Ramayana or Mahabharata. So what happened? The inspector, he asked one child, can you tell me who broke the bow? The child was somewhat confused. What he said, I didn't break. I think that Shamu, that boy who was asked, his name was Ramu. So he asked Ramu, can you tell me who broke the bow? So he said, sir, I didn't break. I think Shamu, he must have broken. So then he asked the teacher, sir, what is this condition? These guys, they don't know who broke the bow. The teacher, he said, we'll try to verify and we'll get back to you. So then the inspector, he went to the headmaster and he asked the headmaster, the children, they don't know who broke the bow. So what the headmaster, what he said, sir, we'll try to fix it and we'll get back to you as quick as possible. Now here what we can see, even the head teacher or the teacher, they also didn't have the knowledge about Ramayana. So this is what is happening in today's world. uh, because we are not training our children from the childhood. So samskaras, in the olden time, what we see, samskaras were given to children from childhood and they were given all the proper training. The Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains like for a person, for younger people, he should be and a very kind. For elderly, he should be with friendly. And for the old ones, he should always respect. That is what is the moral education is given in day to day, how we should behave. But when it comes to today's modern living in hi-fi societies, there is no much proper training given. And Srimad Bhagavatam, we have so many examples. Although Shringi was the son of Rishi, but what happened? The Shringi, the moment he came to know that his father is being put with a dead snake on the neck, he immediately cursed Parikshit Maharaj without giving a second thought. Similarly, Ashwatthama is another example where we see when it came to his life to save himself, he immediately released Brahmastra just to save himself without giving a second thought what will be the consequence. And also we see in the 10th canto that Kamsa, when he heard the voice of the demigods from the sky, so immediately he pounced on Devaki and he wanted to cut off her head. But somehow Vasudev, he consoled him. So we see there are so many examples in material world, even in the olden time. So the mind is so this thing, especially it is not so easy to put the mind on the right track. So recently one devotee was telling me that he had come to our temple in Vrindavan one time in the month of March, and there was a post Gaur Purnima festival. So the boat festival was going on in the temple campus in the evening. And what happened? A guard, security guard, shouted at his father, "Chalo, chalo, niklo yahan se." He said, "Come on, get lost from here." So this devotee was telling, my father got so much annoyed. He said, I don't want to be here in this temple. These people, they don't know how to treat the guests or visitors. So what happens? Sometimes immediately we react to whatever the situation of life. And there are so many real life stories. In Nepal, there was one family member. He was he was he was he got so much annoyed. He went all the 8 family members, including himself. So in a grudge of anger, he immediately took this action. So this is what happens in the material world when there is no proper training how to control the mind, then people can do this kind of things. And in the Bhagavatam, there is a nice example given about the mind by Avanti Brahmana. This is a very nice verse, 11.32.43. नायं जानो मे सुख दुख हेतुर्न देवतात्मा गृह कर्म काल मन परम karma mananti samsara chakram parivartayet. So the Brahmana explains, these people are not the cause of my happiness and distress. Neither are the demigods, my own body, the planets, my past work or time. Rather, it is our own mind alone that causes happiness and distress and perpetuates the rotation of material life. So here, what the Brahmana explains, that oftentimes we tell other people, we consider that they are the cause of our happiness or distress. Sometimes our neighbors or good relatives like that. Sometimes we say that our planets, they are not good. So many people we aim at, but we oftentimes forget that yes, our mind is the cause of all this materialistic things. So also in the Bhagavatam 11th canto, there is a good pastime of Pingala. So in the pastime of this thing, 24 gurus, Lord Krishna explains to Uddhava the story of one, there was one woman and she was living in Videha. Now, she was making her living by just selling her body. Her name was Pingala. So usually she used to make her nice body decoration and she used to stand in a street in the evening and she used to look for customers. And this way her mind often used to tell, this person will give this much, that person is a good person. So this way her mind was always tormenting her. And one day somehow she didn't get any customer and suddenly she got one higher realization that I am trying to serve these materialistic people. So they never give me any happiness. In return, they have given me only tormentation. They have tormented me. So, but the Lord who's sitting in my heart, I never looked at at my Lord, who's giving me everything. So her conclusion was that Asha hi paramam dukkham, nairasham paramam sukham. What she explains, that material desire is undoubtedly the cause of greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. Therefore, completely cutting off her desire to enjoy the so-called lovers, Pingala very immediately went to sleep. So this is what happens in the materialistic way of life. So as long as that mind is not content, nothing good can happen. And literally what we see today, people, even highly educated people from high profile life people, suddenly they commit suicide. It's very difficult to understand. So one devotee, he recently was giving one good example. There was a very big billionaire, a person, and he had everything at his fingertips. So one day what he told, he had a private boat, and what happened, he told the boat captain, I want to go to my private island. And what happened, while the boat was going in the ocean, suddenly he jumped in the ocean. And when the boat arrived at that island, so all they were looking for the owner. So later on, they found his body in the harbor. So this way, in material world, there are so many people, although they are in a so-called higher strata of life, but what we see, they are being controlled by the mind. Actually, what Prabhupada explains, one has to control the mind. The mind should not control him. This is what people, they forget. Like we have the relation of a guru and a disciple, child and parents, husband and wife.
So now what we see, the guru is supposed to control the disciples. That is the right understanding. Whereas the parents, they are supposed to control the children. And whereas husband, he's the master of wife. A husband is supposed to control the wife. That is what is a proper way of understanding. Analytically, what we see, today's people, they are so much agitated. So there was one king, Napoleon, who was in India long back, about 300 years back. So he basically came to India to steal in the sense to rob the country. And while he was in India, somehow his half of his army got this malaria and they died. Somehow he got very much frustrated. So somebody told, why don't you seek some spiritual knowledge? In India, people are highly spiritually elevated. So if you approach a sadhu can give you some spiritual knowledge by which at least you will come to know what is what. So the king, he told one of his soldier, okay, go and get one sadhu. So the soldier, he was looking for a sadhu. So the village people, they said, you will find a sadhu in our village adjoining forest. So the soldier, he went over there and he petitioned the sadhu that our king, he wants to see you. But the sadhu, he was also adamant. What he said, see, it is his need. I can't go to the king because it is his need. He should come here. Like when we get sick, we go to the doctor. Doctor doesn't come to us. That is the real way of life. So the soldier, he went to Alexander and he told the truth. So he got very much annoyed and he said, okay, take me to that sadhu's place where he's staying. So the soldier, he brought the king Alexander to the sadhu's place where he was living in a hut. So now the soldier went inside the hut and he told, see, our king has come up to this place. He's standing outside. Why don't you come out? The sadhu said, no, 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 no. Send him inside. So the soldier, he went out and he told, he is very much denying. He is very much adamant. He wants you to come inside his hut. So by this time, Alexander, he became so much furious. So literally, he took out his sword and he went inside the sadhu's jhopdi hut and he wanted to chop off his head. So the moment he entered that hut, the sadhu, he said in Hindi, "Aao mere dason ke das." So in English, that means, "Oh, welcome, the slave of my slaves." So now Alexander, he couldn't make out what that sadhu is speaking. So the sadhu said, see, now you are now so much furious. You are being controlled by your mind and all your senses. They are controlling you. But I have all my senses and my mind under my control. They can't control me. So Alexander, immediately he could realize, yes, what the sadhu was telling him is in fact is the real truth. So there's one very nice story. I couldn't recall the name of that king. In Ramayana, there is one nice story. There was one king in dynasty of Lord Ram. And one time this king, he was sitting in his garden and he was with his queen and they were having a very good time. And it was evening twilight and the birds were chirping. So suddenly the king laughed. So now the queen was carried away. So what's he thought? How come my husband is laughing without any cause? There is no reason for him to laugh. So she became little curious and she asked the king, so what is the cause of your laughter? Why don't you tell me? So now the king, queen, she was insisting, no, 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 no. How can you laugh without any cause? I want you to tell me the real truth. So now the king was in a real fix. He was in a big dilemma. So the king was thinking now how to cool down my wife. So what he told his queen, give me some time, I'll let you know. So that day in the night, while sleeping, the king was contemplating how to solace my wife. So next day morning, the king went to the jungle, and in the jungle, in the forest, middle of the forest, he saw some goats were grazing, and there were one he goat and there was one she goat, and the she goat was insisting the he goat that she wants to eat the grass from the hilltop, from the cliff. But the he goat was telling, see, it is so and it's steepy, I can't climb there, and grass either from top or from the bottom, more or less, there is no much change. But she was again and again, she goat was insisting that he goat. So now this he goat, he got very much annoyed, and he started kicking on the face of that she goat. So suddenly that she goat, she came to her senses, and she says, no, 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 I don't want that grass from that hilltop. So their problem was solved. So this king, he got a very nice clue. So what he thought, okay, the Lord gave me a nice answer. So oftentimes we see the Paramatma in the heart, he gives us some antidote. So the king, he came back from morning walk, and the queen was very much anxiously waiting. Okay, today my husband will tell me the real truth, why he was laughing. So the moment he entered the palace, the queen was very much curious, and she said, why don't you tell me the cause for your laughter yesterday? So the king, he became little furious, and he gave nice slaps on her cheeks. So suddenly there was a complete change in the queen, and she fell at his feet. She says, no, 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 I don't want to know why you are laughing. So this way the problem was solved. So now what we see, Prabhupada explains that yes, like he gives one good example. When we are diseased, so the best antidote for any disease is called fasting. Like if some beggar is insisting you for money, 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 money like that. So what happens if you neglect that beggar, if you don't look at him, so he will go away. So there is a saying in India that if you neglect the guest who come uninvited, if you don't cater to them, they will go away on their own. So similarly, the disease, when you don't cater to that disease, so the disease will go away. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he has given the best antidote. What he explains that every day morning after getting up, we should beat our head with shoes. 100 times we should beat the head with the shoes, and night time before going to bed, we should beat it with broom 100 times. So this antidote is given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Prabhupada explains further, one who controls the mind is called Goswami, and one who is controlled by is called Godasa. So material world, there are two kinds of people. We often, in our terminology, we call Grihastha and Grihamedi. So similarly, there is a Goswami and Godasa. So Goswami means a devotee who is using his senses in the service of the Lord, and Godasa means he is always catering to his senses. He is being controlled by his senses. So what Prabhupada explains, Goswami knows the standard of happiness, standard happiness. And today's world, what we see, because of this westernized society, there is a standard of people from lower strata to middle to higher. So everyone has his own standard of sense happiness, sense enjoyment. And today in India, in news, like we see all this big Hollywood and many other Bollywood industry people, they are into drugs. They are more or less into drugs because they are in a higher society of life. But for a devotee, he will never relate to what the senses they demand. In fact, he will never cater to the demand of the senses or the mind. So Rup Goswami in his Padyavali, he has written one very nice verse. So what he explains, कामादीनां कतीना कतिदा पालिता दुर्निदेशास् तेषां जाता मयिना करुणा न तृप्त नपो नोपदेशन्ति उस्त्रिज्यानः यदुपते समर्पतं लब्ध बुद्धिस् त्वाम् अयथ शरणं अभयं मां निक्षिंष्टव दासे. So what he explains, Rupa Goswami, that, oh my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor I have ever desired to give them up. O my Lord, I heard, O Lord, of Yadu dynasty recently. However, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving up them. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires. And now I come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. So here we should know that yes, as a practitioner devotee, so we should always understand that we should never cater to what our mind explains. So Prabhupada explains transcendental sense happiness. The senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesha, the supreme owner of the senses. So for this, Rupa Goswami also mentions in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's one nice verse. It is quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita also. Sarvopadi vinurmuktam tad partvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. So it is mentioned that bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of Lord, the Supreme Personal Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So this is what happens, that we forget all the material designation. So material designation, our acharyas, they explain, puja, labh, pratishtha, that in materialistic way of life, so everyone wants to be worshipped, profit, adoration, and distinction. So that is what these people they are looking for in materialistic way of life. And also, according to today's verse, this is a very nice verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto. We have the best example of King Ambarish, 9.4.18 to 20. So in the three verses, a complete lifestyle of King Ambarish is being explained. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vaśaṁ sivaikунఠ gunan karo. Okay. Hare Krishna. So the line got broke. Now what we see, King Maharaj Ambrish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. His words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the Lord's spoken words by Krishna or about Krishna, he engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Lord Krishna. Then also Krishna's temple and Krishna's palace, places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his senses in touching the bodies of Lord's devotees. He engaged his senses of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to Lord Krishna. Then he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to holy places and temples of Lord. His head is bowing down before the Lord. All his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Amrish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements related to the Lord. Then what we see, this is what is the true understanding we should have regarding how we should serve the Lord. And in the end, Prabhupada explains, indeed, Maharaj Amrish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment to the Lord and be completely free from material desires. So Prabhupada further explains that Krishna consciousness is defined as serving Krishna with purified senses. So Prabhupada explains that is the way of bringing the senses under full control. And thus, Krishna consciousness offers the highest perfection of yoga. So what Prabhupada is trying to explain is that if we want to have the highest perfection of yoga, so Krishna consciousness is the only way of life. Also, Rup Goswami, he explains how we can engage the mind 24 hours. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.4 Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna nivasayet sarva vidhi nishedasya eva kinkara. What he explains, one should fix his mind. What he explains, that one should fix mind on Krishna by any means. All rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastra should be subservient to this principle. If one takes to that line of activities, Krishna consciousness, then all things, all regulations will follow. Just like a servant follows a master, if the master starts, the servant also follows. So this is what Prabhupada gives the example. Like we have, like for those who are very big people, they have so many servants, and their servants, they are always ready to serve them. So similarly, we should try to engage the mind with the senses, and this way it is possible for us that somehow we can engage our senses in devotional service of the Lord. So now we come to the commentaries of our Acharyas. So Sridhar Swami explains, Lord Krishna, a specific example gives that if the mind is losing its equilibrium, begins to wave due to influence of Raja and Tama, passion, then the mind should be apprehended and brought securely under control, guided back to focus on the Atma or soul in serene meditative state. So the conclusion is that whatever object tempts the unsteady mind to pursue it, from that very same object, one must withdraw the restless mind and steady solely on the eternal Atma. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains, if the mind contracting the mode of passion, happiness to become unsteady due to appearance of previous attachments, one should again practice yoga. Then in the end, Baldev Vidyabhushan, he explains, if sometimes the mind becomes disturbed by subtle sinful tendencies. Hare Krishna. So Haribol, we were reading the commentaries of the Acharyas. So we're in the end, we were discussing about Baldev Vidya Bhushan. Madhvacharya also explains that whatever also means wherever the mind turns in pursuit of any external object, whatever it should be diverted back to rerouted within the Atma or soul inside and exclusively installed reside there. This is Lord Krishna's meaning. Then Ramanujacharya explains, Lord Krishna is explaining that whither ever soever the fickle mind flutters and flickers about to wander in infatuation away from the Atma or the soul in pursuit of the objects of the senses, let all efforts be made to withdraw the mind, therefore, and guide it back, pursuing it convincingly the fact that the Atma, the soul itself is the supreme goal of happiness. So this way we come to the conclusion of today's class. So I have one or two videos. So I'll just put on the videos. So this video is regarding the monkey, how the monkey, what we see, usually the best example is given that of a monkey. मैं अभी कुछ वीडियो आ रहा है क्या दिख रहा है फुल स्क्रीन दिखाई दे रहा है ट्रांसमिशन में थोड़ा लफड़ा है Haribol. So we'll share another video. This is also very nice. As I told, we should not be controlled by the mind. In fact, we should control the mind. This very much applies to that logic. Here you can see, it's a very beautiful video. इनके टीचर है So what we see, these are the students and the teacher. They are making the fun of the teacher. So the teacher comes and he tells, all of you are doing so much mischief. I should teach you, all of you should be given a hard lesson. So the teacher comes in midst of the, what you see, the birds, and he wants to give them a proper lesson. But they don't want to learn the lesson. And you can see how they react with the teacher. So they want to put down the teacher. They said, we don't want to listen to you. So the teacher is trying his best to counsel them, but they put the teacher in the bottom and they try to pull him down. So there is a saying, Murkhanam Updesho hi Prapokapara Kalpate. So what we saw here is that the mind, how so this is the unsteady mind. You can see about the unsteady mind. So that was regarding the unsteady mind. Okay, this is already shown. Hare Krishna. So now we come to our conclusion. So what we see today, Lord Krishna, basically in today's verse, he told us about the three qualities of the mind. That is niścala, wandering, cañcalam, flickering, and asthiram is unsteady. And what Prabhupada explains that yes, one should not be controlled by the mind. In fact, one should control the mind. And especially the Goswamis, they know how to control the mind. So Hare Krishna. So we come to the conclusion. If some devotee has some question, they can put the question. Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhu. So anyone has any questions or comments, you can unmute and ask, or you can write in the chat box.
आपको कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है, पूछो.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu. My question is, like you have explained that we can control the mind by taking the shelter of the Lord. Now, how to actually surrender and take the shelter of the Lord? We know that there are 9 processes mentioned. So, but we have also heard in lectures that the heads of Ravanas were coming again and again. So it needs the mercy of the Lord. So Lord Ram used the weapon given by ātmany. So how to actually take surrender of the Lord to get the mercy of the Lord to be able to control the mind, because the material nature, it is very difficult to overcome.
So yeah, actually that will come in the later part of this chapter when Arjuna explains cañcalam hi mana Krishna pramati balvadrudam. So for that Krishna he gives 2-pointed formula. Krishna explains that he tells Arjuna that mano durnigram chalam abhyasena akaunteya vairagyana cha uchyate. So what Krishna explains to Arjuna's question is that yes, mana is mind is restless, obstinate, but Krishna gives 2-point formula that abhyasa in material world, what we say, practice, practice, and practice. What they say, practice makes man perfect. Also, there is a saying, experience is the best teacher. So there are so many things are given about the practice. And in material world, what we see, the people, how they become experts in some fields, like either it is driving or cooking. So there are so many ways of life. People are super experts. So how they become expert in that? Because of constant practice. So similarly, we need this kind of practice in devotional service. We have to always hammer the mind. So Krishna first explains abhyasa and vairagya. Vairagya means Like here it is because the mind is flickering. Like what happens? Oftentimes children, whatever they see, they want to take it. So what the parents they do, they hide that thing from the kids before they demand that. So similarly, what we can do, vairagya means we should not expose our senses and our mind to the materialistic things. So what happens today? We are watching mobile. There are so many social websites, and there are so many things we are being exposed by social media. So vairagya means we should try to be away from the social media. That is what is vairagya means. Because today people are very much tormented by the social media, and more or less they are getting more and more mad because what they are seeing is not the truth. They are so much hammered by social media. So if these two things we follow what Krishna he told, that abhyasa and vairagya, that is a practice, and renunciation, I think these 2 points they will work. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna. So we'll conclude.
Thank you.
Hari Bol.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Dandavad. Hari Bol.